Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Hey, gang. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy move that I've just been through. It has been nuts, but we are here safe and sound in the snow. Hope everyone has enjoyed a happy and safe holiday season and are looking forward to what's in store for 2026. I know I am. More true scary stories on the way. Also, bear with me, I am in a new recording space and haven't quite worked out all the kinks yet, so bear with me on that. I appreciate it. Quick shout out to Glenn P. and his sons Oliver and Wyatt. Glenn emailed me and let me know that they're listening to the podcast as they are out and about doing their business, so appreciate you guys listening. Hope you're not too young. That would make me feel bad that you're hearing all this nonsense. Everyone, I hope you have a safe and enjoyable ringing in of the new year. And sit back and relax. Listen to some true scary New Year's stories that were submitted by you listeners. Appreciate that. And a reminder, if you have a true scary story of any nature, please send it to Uncle Josh, truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Now, let's get it on. The Loudest Quiet Night, submitted by Angela Angel. New Year's Eve 2022 fell on a Saturday, and this matters. The neighborhood I lived in was packed with people who didn't live there. Friends, relatives, party guests, and cars were lined up on both sides of the street. Fireworks started early and continued in unpredictable bursts throughout the evening, which was annoying, but hey, it was New Year's. What are you going to do? I was home alone. My partner was working an overnight shift. We grabbed a quick dinner together. I wished him a good night. He took off, and I locked the doors, set the alarm, and went upstairs around 11:30. I watched the ball drop on TV and then finally decided to hit the sack. There wasn't really much else to do. At 12:14 a.m., I heard the garage door open. I assumed my partner had come home early. I even smiled until I checked my phone and saw no messages and no missed calls from him. That would be odd. He always let me know when he was coming home early. So I called out his name, and he didn't answer. That's when it dawned on me that the alarm didn't trigger. And that's when I understood the garage keypad code had to have been used to get in. I heard footsteps moving through the garage, then into the kitchen. They were slow and confident, like someone who had done this before, so for another second I thought maybe it was my partner. But something in my stomach told me that something was very wrong. I listened intently, still trying to figure out if it was my partner or a stranger. I heard someone opening cabinets. I heard our water running briefly. And then I heard the sound of testing of doors. Then I heard the footsteps coming up the hallway. I heard them stop and listen. Fireworks exploded outside. And that's when I heard the footsteps start again. It seemed like whoever this was timing his steps with the noise. I locked my bedroom door and pushed my dresser against it and then sat with my back against that. As I was getting ready to call the cops, I heard this person speak. "I know you're awake," he said. It was conversational and almost bored. Nobody sleeps through this kind of noise. Then I heard him try the bedroom door once. He actually leaned his weight against it. Not forcing it, but just measuring. And then he stood there. As I mentioned, I was already calling 911, and the dispatcher picked up. I was yelling into the phone that someone had broken into my house and was now trying to get into my bedroom. I was watching the doorknob twitch slightly as if this guy was just resting his hand on it and bopping it up and down. Then there was another firework that went off outside. It was loud and it was close. I heard the guy whisper, "That one would have covered a scream." The police arrived 9 minutes later, and this guy obviously got the hint and fled through the garage. They did catch him 3 streets away. He had been released from jail about 6 months earlier. He had been known to do this too. His method was consistent. Always on holidays, always holidays with fireworks, and he knew which homes had unlocked routines. He memorized whole neighborhoods, and he learned which houses went quiet after midnight. When the detectives pressed him about everything, he told detectives he didn't expect me to call for help. The only thing that he said in that response was, "Yeah, no one ever hears them anyway." I have not spent a holiday alone since, and never plan on being home by myself again if I can help it. New Year 2018, submitted by Z-Rock. The house wasn't known for being haunted, and that's important. There weren't any legends or rumors, no ghost stories passed down through the family. It was just an old, isolated, and difficult house to heat in the winter. My aunt lived there alone after my uncle died, and when she was hospitalized unexpectedly in December of 2018, my cousins and I had to take turns staying overnight so the pipes wouldn't freeze. Yeah, super fun. My turn came on New Year's Eve. I got there just before dusk, and everything was normal. The house smelled clean. It had been recently dusted and everything. There weren't any drafts and no odd sounds, and I remember thinking how quiet it was without the radio on, which my aunt always had on. Around 8:40, I noticed the kitchen clock was 6 minutes fast, so I reset it. At 9:15, when I looked at it again, it was fast once again, by the same amount of time. I assumed the battery was dying and just replaced it. And then I checked my phone. My phone was correct. The microwave clock matched my phone. It was only the kitchen clock that was wrong. As I sat there watching the New Year's Eve festivities on TV, around 10:30, I heard what sounded like someone closing a door upstairs. Not slamming it, just a quiet, final click of a latch settling into place. I walked up slowly and checked each room. Every door was open and there were no windows disturbed. There wasn't any cold air blowing in and nothing was out of place. At 11:11, the house made a sound I can only describe as pressure releasing. It was a long, slow groan from somewhere inside the walls. Then after it ended, the temperature dropped enough that my hands began to ache. It was that cold. At 11:45, the kitchen clock chimed. It wasn't on the hour, and it only chimed once. Then again, exactly 60 seconds later. I realized then that it wasn't running fast anymore. It was counting ahead. At 11:57, the house became active. Not violently, but deliberately. Floorboards seemed to be creaking in sequence, as if someone were walking methodically from room to room. Light switches flipped off ahead of me when I moved through the house, and the radio turned on briefly, emitting static before cutting out. At 11:59, I heard breathing behind me. You better believe I was freaked the F out at this point. This breathing wasn't close enough to feel, but it was present and patient, if you will. Midnight passed without anything happening. No sounds, no releasing, just silence. At 12:06 a.m., the kitchen clock chimed again. I went in and saw that it read 12:12. The microwave read 12:06, and so did my phone. Then the breathing came back, this time from the stairwell. I didn't run, I didn't scream. I just sat down at the table because something in me understood that reacting would make whatever was happening worse. Yeah, why I didn't call anybody, that's beyond me. I was too intrigued by what was happening around me. At 12:18, the footsteps descended the stairs, slowly, heavy enough to register the weight. I stared at the doorway until the sound stopped just short of the kitchen. And then a voice spoke. Not super loud, and not in my head, but somewhere in between. It's kind of hard to describe. But I heard it clear as day. You stayed too long. The activity kept up all night, not as bad as it had been up until midnight, but it was still there, weird stuff. Everything stopped at dawn. Before I headed out, I checked the kitchen clock one last time, and it was gone. I mean, it was just gone. It wasn't broken, it hadn't fallen, it was gone. All that was left was a faint, clean rectangle on the wall where it had been. The house was eventually sold in March, and I heard the new owners replaced all the wiring, tore out the walls, installed cameras, the whole nine. I do know, however, that they moved out in the December of 2019. He had a pattern, submitted by Daily Jen. This didn't start on New Year's Eve, it's just when it escalated. I first noticed this strange guy who seemed to be following me around in October. I would go to the same coffee shop every day at the same time of day, and in October I noticed that he was always there when I was. Not trying to be too paranoid, I figured, that's the same guy, must be going to a job at the same time I do. That's why he was there. He never approached me and never spoke, but he always looked at me, and I guess just happened to be there. But by December, I noticed that he was appearing everywhere I went. The library, the gym, the grocery store. And he was always kind of distant, but still sort of near, if that makes sense. Always like a plausible place for him to be there when I was there. Well, on New Year's Eve 2021, I went out with some friends. Normally New Year's was my one night to really cut loose, but that year I drank less than usual. For some reason I felt like I had to be alert, that I had to be careful. Again, I didn't want to be too paranoid, but something in my gut and the back of my head was just warning me that something was off. I caught myself watching reflections in the windows of the bar we were at, scanning the crowd, looking for this guy. I didn't see him all night and finally started to relax just before the new year. When it was time to go, we all started to leave the bar, and I was thankful that I didn't see that guy that night, but mad at myself for his presence in my head to kind of ruin things for me. I still did have a good time, though. When we left, that's when I did see him. He was standing across the street, looking like he was texting someone. When I started walking, he walked exactly 10 seconds later and began following me. He never closed that distance, and that was the worst part. It's like he wanted me to be aware that he was there. When I stopped to look at my phone, he stopped, and when I turned suddenly, I saw him smile, but he didn't wave at me or anything, and he certainly didn't speak. I finally got to my building, which was only a couple of doors down from the bar that we had been, hence why I was walking home by myself. That's when I dropped my keys in the snow. This guy stepped up, not touching me or not threatening me. He looked right into my face and said, "Next year will be easier. You'll recognize the signs faster." I had no idea what the hell he was talking about, but I had my keys in my hand by that point. I pushed the button to access the outside door and shut it quickly behind me before he could come in. Then I put my key in the interior door, unlocked it, jumped in, locked the door, and called the police. After describing what had happened, they told me there wasn't much they could do. I mean, he hadn't committed any crime. I understood what they meant, but I was still pissed. I was really freaked out, and they didn't seem to be taking this seriously. Well, over the next couple of months, things changed. I noticed things in my apartment had been moved around, and it certainly wasn't me moving them. One time I even came home to find all of my laundry that I had left out had been folded, incorrectly, mind you. I also noticed my shower curtain had been pulled closed when I knew I had left it open. That was a habit I always had. In March, a woman from my neighborhood disappeared, and no one could figure out where the heck she had gone. Family had no idea. Friends had no idea. It was just like she had vanished. Well, this guy that I had seen, he was arrested in April. In his apartment were spreadsheets, walking routes, holiday calendars, numbers, notes about noise levels and police response times. My name was on a list on this spreadsheet, and next to it was a single line. New Year's Eve. Conditioning phase successful. I don't celebrate New Year's anymore. I stay home. I watch TV and keep quiet, with my phone fully charged and my doors locked. Because the thing no one tells you about stuff like this is, some people don't stalk you to just grab you immediately. They stalk you to train you. And that was my case. This guy was conditioning me for what he had planned the following year. New Year's Eve is when he learned how quiet my fear really was. Everybody stay safe out there. Happy New Year. Hey gang, here's a bonus. It's kind of a best of. It's from, 8 years ago? But I really like this one, so sharing it again. A New Year's Eve to Not Forget. Submitted by Paul K. 3 years ago, I was dog sitting for my parents at the house I grew up in New Hampshire. It was a little cul-de-sac neighborhood with a lot of kids when I was growing up, and my parents were on a cruise for the holidays and asked if I would come home and take care of our Scotty, Mitzi. For New Year's Eve, I wanted to just lay low, smoke a little, and kind of hang out with my girlfriend at the time. She came over, we burned one down on the back porch and then went inside. I mean, it was wicked cold out, and even though we bundled up, it was still freezing. I started to make dinner while we watched a bootleg Fish DVD of a live show from Madison Square Garden on a New Year's Eve past, and we were having a great time. We were laughing and talking about funny stories from our childhood, and she was looking through old yearbooks and photo albums my mom still had out in the living room. I'm not with that girl anymore, but I'll just refer to her as Jenny. We ate a late dinner, and were just about to chill with some wine for her and beer for me, and then watch the ball drop on TV. It was a little after midnight when we heard screaming from next door. A bunch of college kids were partying over there, and when I looked out the window, I saw 3 guys running around the house buck naked and laughing and really whooping it up. I started laughing too. Shaking my head, I sat down back with Jenny. Like 15 minutes later, our doorbell rings, and I'm wondering if they sent someone over naked to mess with us. But it wasn't them. It was a guy who looked around 21, at least he was younger than me, I could tell. I was 27 at the time. And this guy looked a little rough around the edges, and I could smell booze on his breath when he asked if this was the party at John's. I said no, and told him that he was at the wrong house. John lived next door. He just mumbled something, got into his car, and pulled it into the street and parked in front of the house next door. I watched as he and 2 other guys got out and went into my neighbor's house. It was around 1 o'clock, and the 3 amigos were again outside running naked, and I grabbed Jenny so she could see it. She burst out laughing, and I turned away to sit down. Then she laughed really hard and said that one guy was locked out and was pounding on the back door. I just said, "Oh shit, man, he must be freezing." Then the smile left her face, and she said, Oh, no. Some guy just punched him in the face." I got up and saw one of the naked guys sprawled on the porch with the guy who was at my door earlier standing over him. There was screaming from inside the house that we couldn't make out, so I went onto my back porch, and I could then make out female voices screaming, No, you'll hurt him! Stop it, Stephen!" Another guy came out with a bucket of water and dumped it on the guy lying on the floor, and he howled in pain. A girl came out yelling, and this Stephen guy grabbed her by the face and pushed her back inside and said,
"This is what you get for cheating, bitch."
And then he and the other guy went in and slammed the door. This kid on his porch was half drunk, half knocked out, naked in a pile of snow, and these fucking guys just dumped water all over him. Jenny was next to me, and she said, "He'll freeze, we've got to help him." I put my boots on, ran through the snow between our houses, and looked at the kid. It was John, who was a college kid home on break. I was 6 or 7 years older than him, but I remembered him as I did grow up next door when I was in school and during my college years too.
I pounded on the door and no one answered, and when I yelled out, "You guys need to let this kid in," all I heard was a muffled,
"Don't you say a fucking word."
I hit the door again and all I got was,
"Get the fuck out of here if you know what's good for you."
something was up and it wasn't good. I grabbed John's arms and told him to get up and come with me. Jenny grabbed an Afghan and wrapped it around him once he got inside, and I went to get him some clothes and get some hot tea. He was shivering and could barely talk. "Aaron's still over there," he stammered out. He could hurt her." He started getting really worked up, and I told him to slow down and tell me what was up. He and his two friends had their girlfriends over to party and got sloppy drunk. This Steven guy was his girlfriend's ex and was clearly none too happy about it. He kept saying he needed to help her, and I told him that he needed to stay put. I went back over next door, knocked on the front door, and got no answer. I tried the knob and it opened, and I stepped inside, and I could hear crying coming from another room, and I called out for Aaron, the only other person I knew who was there. Steven poked his head around a corner and said,
"This doesn't concern you. Mind your own fucking business."
And then he waved a knife at me with the shoo-shoo motion. "Look, pal," I said, "I know this isn't my business, but I'm giving you a chance to leave before I call the cops. I suggest you take it."
"I'm not your fucking pal, faggot,"
he said, and I could hear a girl scream out. "Okay, have fun in the clink tonight, dick," I said, and then ran back to my house. I called the police and told them what was up, and Jenny looked out the front window and told me 3 guys got in a car and sped away. Then, 5 figures appeared on my doorstep. It was the rest of the kids next door. Jesus, they weren't even kids. 2 of the guys were pretty banged up. They weren't small dudes, but I know how hard it is to fight when you're really tanked. The other guys had been dealing on them for a while, and their faces were puffy and smeared with blood. Thank God the girls weren't hurt, but I could see them shaking. What a dick thing to say. I didn't mean for the guys to be hurt either, but you know what I'm going for. I told them all to get inside and then lock the front door. Jenny made more tea, and the girls were all crying, and the guys were just sitting there looking totally dazed. I told them all the cops were coming, and they were all more concerned about underage drinking, and I remember thinking, shit, that's what you're worried about right now? All through this, my dog Mitzi is barking her head off and being a complete pain in the ass. Suddenly, there was a pounding on the front and back doors of my house. I was about to find out that Steven and his buddies had not left the neighborhood. They were yelling all kinds of shit and threatening to beat my ass and all that good stuff. Then I heard glass break, and I went into my front hallway and saw that Steven had broken the glass next to the door. He was trying to reach in to unlock it. I told everyone to stay where they were, ran upstairs to get my dad's Glock he kept in his bedroom. I snagged it, snapped a full clip in, chambered around, and ran back downstairs. Drunk Steven was still trying to get in. I unlocked the door but kept the security chain on it, pointed the pistol at Steven, and told him to get on the ground. His hand was bleeding, and he had this look on his face like, "Say what?" "Get on the ground," I said again, and he kind of backed up and said,
Dude, we'll leave. It's cool, we'll leave."
I wasn't trying to be all Mr. Tough Guy, but I did say, "That time is past, fucko. Get on the ground." Thank God I heard the engine of a speeding vehicle, and 2 cops drove into our cul-de-sac. I backed up as Steven turned around, and he knew he was screwed at that point. I shut the door, unchambered the gun, took out the clip, and laid everything down on the kitchen counter. We all could hear a lot of "freeze" and "get back here's" outside. As the 2 clowns in my backyard tried to run, one guy did get away, but they found him later that night, and the other cops got the other guy. The cops knocked on my front door, and I let them in, and the kids from next door were all talking over one another, trying to explain what had happened. One cop looked down at the Glock and asked if it was mine. I told him it was my dad's, and he walked me into another room to ask what had happened. To make a longer story short, To make a long story short, these three guys crashed the party as the girl Erin had dumped Steven a couple of months back, and she was now dating the kid next door. They went in acting all normal, and then did the thing with the water and then started to beat the shit out of the other guys before they even knew what was happening. I don't know what happened to those guys, but everyone went back next door, and shortly thereafter, I could see a lot of parents pulling up to pick up their kids. The cop I talked to came back up to me and asked if I wanted to press charges on Steven for what he did to the door, but I told him it was my parents' house and that they should deal with it. By that time, I had taken pictures of it and put a piece of cardboard over the broken glass and then secured it with some duct tape. Before the cop left, he thanked me for helping out, commented that it was a nice gun, and said to have a good rest of the evening. That's when he froze and looked down at my bag of weed that I had forgotten to stash. It was sitting right there on the counter. He looked at me and said, "Somehow I know you'll have a good rest of the evening, sir. Happy New Year." He smiled and left, and that was that. And yeah, Jenny and I did proceed to get baked. We needed it after all that.
Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. Once again, Happy New Year. Looking forward to some great things in 2026. Hope you all stick around. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, send it to UncleJoshTrueScaryStories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you're catching this on YouTube and you like what you heard and saw, give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I'd love to know what you thought of the stories. And of course, maybe even become a subscriber. It's all free, and it all helps out in the algorithms. If you'd like to take your support a step further, find a link to my Patreon page in the description, and maybe consider getting some Uncle Josh or Campfire Crew merchandise. Really ring in the new year looking really cool with some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew stuff. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.